Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. And for those watching, apologize for starting off a little late. We're still trying to run through some technical difficulties with Barbara's presentation, so not a problem. So we appreciate everybody. A couple of things, though. I'm get on my soapbox again. We're on Rumble. Please join us, follow us. I do have to say that we've had a lot of views and everything. I would like say, if you like what we do here, follow us, tell your friends, your neighbors, and all that. Follow us on Rumble, and we're even on YouTube again, even though until they kick us off again. But join us and all that. Like us, be sure to sign in and like those things, because that gets the algorithms going and makes it so that maybe someday we'll be able to make some money off of it and help us facilitate keeping these things rolling. So again, ask you to do that. Also, what we have, and you see at the back of the room, and we'll, and we've had that before. We have this year. Well, this whole year is the America 250 Commission is celebrating 250 years ago was where the Revolutionary War was. Next July 4th is the 250th anniversary signed Declaration of Independence. And so we are, every week, some stand-up for Idaho ladies and whatnot are doing we're doing a historical minute, and then on every Thursday, so tomorrow at 5 o'clock with KID News Radio 106.3, we'll be on the Jolene Thomas Show, just talking a brief, historical discussion on that. And we really appreciate KID News Radio for supporting us and helping us with that. Anyway, what I was going to say, we have a carved flag, a wood carved flag back here that's we're doing a raffle on it. I think it's an amazing piece of work, and it's a raffle for Stand Up for Idaho, and like to sell $20 tickets. We're going to sell them until the 4th of July next year, and then we'll pull the winner. And it's we're doing this as a fundraiser for Stand Up for Idaho so that we can continue doing these things. And on that also, where did he go? Jared Thompson, he's going to come up. There's another raffle going on, but it's not to outdo our raffle. Okay, but he has something good to tell. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared for just a second. He can tell what he has going on.
All right, so I'm with Timber Creek Bison. We're a local bison ranch out of Idaho Falls. We've got a herd in Idaho Falls and Rigby, and annually we do a donation to the Idaho Falls Community Food Basket, and so that's usually bison meat. And this raffle, what we're doing is we're raffling off a freezer and some of our own bison meat, and then the proceeds additional to that go over the top, they will be donated to the Idaho Falls Community Food Basket. So the tickets are $5 for a single ticket, and then $5 for 20. So if anybody's interested, that's going to be drawn in November on the 17th. So thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Sounds like a good thing. A freezer full of beef, a freezer full of meat. Nobody can complain about that. Couple of more things, just what we have going on. Okay. Tomorrow we're actually having a special event, and what that is basically a redo of what we tried to do last week. Last week we had invited candidates for Idaho Falls City Council seats 4, 6, and a couple from seat 2 to come. Many of them did not show up. I actually called a few of them on it and all this, and short of it is some people that didn't come here grumbled about it. And so what we're going to do is have sort of a redo tomorrow to try and see if we can get people here to talk to us and so you can get to know the candidates. Recognizing it is very short notice. It is right at the end of the election season. Election day is next Tuesday, a week from yesterday. So regardless of whatever, be sure, if you haven't voted already, be sure to go vote. Okay? So we're going to have that tomorrow. Going to be here at 6:30, and hopefully we'll see how many candidates we can get to be here. But it's good that you get to be able to know who your candidates are. The following week, next week, on our regular one, November 5th, we're going to have Reed Christensen. Reed is actually a January 6th prisoner. And, he's going to come and tell us what went on and whatnot. And he was incarcerated for about 18 months, I understand. And so come and listen. This is a first-hand story, a personal story about what he went through. So I'll encourage that. You'll also see back here we have, and it's on December 12th, Ben Gieson's going to be here. Well, okay. November, say, I'm hurrying. So, November, okay. What did I say, December? Well, I'm working for Christmas. I'm looking towards Christmas. Okay, November 12th, He's going to be here and talking about the Federal Reserve and the national debt. And he's written this book, Purchasing Power. This is just a display, so nobody can have it. But I'm not going to tell you all about it, but he's going to tell you a little bit about our money system and how it really works. Okay? So I'll leave it up to that. The following week, which will be November 19th, we're going to have a gentleman named David Ripley. He's actually from an organization called Idaho Chooses Life. How many of you know that there's an initiative, being a petition for an initiative going on to actually undo Idaho's abortion laws? Okay, Barbara can maybe speak to that, but I'm just going to say a little bit. Anyway, David is coming to talk to us about that. He actually lives in Boise and all that, but he's going to come and talk to us about what's going on so that we can at least get that perspective of it. I will try to contact the other side to see if they would be willing to come and talk to us also. I think it's important that we all have, that we hear all sides of the story. And that's really important. So far, it's been one of these things of, we'll leave your name and number and we'll look and see if we can fit you into your schedule and all of this type of stuff. I don't like doing that necessarily, but I'm going to keep trying to until I can actually get a hold of somebody so that we can see what we can do. So anyway, from now until Thanksgiving, and actually the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we're not having a meeting. It's a Thanksgiving break. It's time for us all to enjoy our families and Thanksgiving and everything. So, are we getting close, Barbara and Chris? Yeah? You just need a what? Oh, somebody knew what we were doing. Well, I'll have to say this, and it seems I'm trying to kill time. Excuse me, and I know I'm, it's good to see that somebody else is as technically challenged as I am, so I appreciate that. Well, as she says, she actually did get it downloaded from her phone to her computer, but it's getting from her computer to the thumb drive that was a challenge. So that's okay. We can do that. Barbara, do you want to come up and start and talk for a little bit and whatnot until we can get this figured out? Because I know people didn't come here to listen to me rattle. So, okay. All right. Well, let's give Barbara a big hand and everything, and thank her for what she's coming about. I guess I need to introduce why is Barbara here. Barbara, you get to get up here. You can walk around here. Is actually in mid-September this last year, nearly 250 state legislators from all 50 states, including Barbara, went to Israel to an event called 50 States, One Israel. The event was described by the Israeli government as the largest ever bipartisan delegation of American state lawmakers to visit the country. Now, this trip was funded entirely by the Israeli government and all that. There was no U.S. funds or anything spent on it. I believe that's correct, right, Barbara? Yep. And so I heard about it and whatnot, and saw Barbara's name and said, "Hey, Barbara, would you come tell us all about it and what was going on?" And she said she'd love to. So, okay, so now let's give her a big hand and all that, and I'll turn it over to her. There you go. Here's water for you if you want. And you want to use that, you can. Okay.
Well, so I do apologize for that. I thought after 3 hours of playing around with it, not knowing what I was doing, that I achieved the goal of putting it in a folder, and I did not. So nonetheless, we have something that I'll be able to share with you, because some of this stuff is a little more interesting when you can see it. First thing I want to say, I want to address, this has been a most interesting experience, particularly because powers that be out there, I don't think until this year, somewhat starting in April, certainly because of this trip, I have realized that anti-Semitism is alive and well. I had absolutely no idea that it was so strong. It's actually an interesting phenomenon, because I think it's being hit from two different directions. If you look at those that we typically say on the left, no one fits in just one category. And you look at those that fit, on the usually farther right, that are supposedly Republicans. And that's not to say I'll get into questioning the government. We all can do that. But from the left standpoint, it seems to be a pro-Palestinian movement, kind of getting to and then from the right, it's an anti-Zionism, anti-Semite movement, both achieving the same thing, which is a huge hatred of Israel. I have learned that this hatred is not just something aimed at, say, Benjamin Netanyahu, which I think we all should have the right to question what governments do. I don't think any government is ever free from making mistakes or doing things that may be questionable. And I'll leave some of that even to yourselves to decide where you fall on that. Well, I can hear loud and clear. Can you guys hear? Who? They can't hear?
I'll ask everybody this. The people that are watching on the live stream and this is being recorded, they get the sound off the microphone. Okay? And so if you have questions, I'll bring the microphone around, but you need to talk into the microphone, please. And that includes the speaker, please. Thank you.
I have to remember this in the future. You're going to have to find me a headset, because I don't use microphones. Even on the floor, if you notice that, I turn mine on because they say to, but I don't speak into it. I don't have to. So looking at where we are politically and what's happened, there are a lot of sides to this. What I see ultimately is a lot of hate. And that hate can go both directions. And I also see it permeating, in some respects, permeating our community. And I do want to say this, because I think we have a mixture of religions here, which is fantastic. Let me tell you what's disappointing to me is, including with our own Bonneville County Central Committee, and I don't mind saying this, it was voted down, I was there, this idea of bringing in someone who is going to basically talk about the problems and basically how to identify Christian nationalists. Ironically, somebody who was just in, Greg Graff, did a hit piece on me, calling me a Christian nationalist, using every single fact he put in there was 100% wrong. And so, like, to get with Eastern Idaho News and go over that, that's verifiable. He used pictures that had nothing anyway. 100% wrong. I see that as spreading hate, because now if I decided to speak up against how he's 100% wrong, what am I speaking against? And what does it really mean? And for him, it had to do with the gentleman named Doug Wilson, who I hadn't even heard of when I first mentioned it. Hadn't even heard of. Ironically, my seatmate, Marco Erickson, hadn't even heard of him. So, Greg Graff, you can't pin that on me. We don't all know who he was, like you purport to say. So what I see, though, is name-calling. I have seen LDS people accusing then members in religions in our community, they're Christian nationalists. And then what I see from those members in the community saying, yeah, you LDS people, you're not Christians. And pretty soon we have a divide that's harder to unite than anything else, because religion of all things, especially a Christian Judeo religion, hopefully based on supporting constitutional principles, should unite us. And as I tried to, express to people, and I'm still working out my cut and paste response, that we have we have far many more problems than that. I even said that with the Bonneville County Central Committee and those who were voting to get them to reconsider, which they did. And it was right after Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. Many accused him of that same thing. Really? Is that where we're going to go, especially as religious members of this community? Shame on us. Okay? If there are other things that we're concerned about, thank you. If there are other things we're concerned about, we can be concerned about those who may promote things like Sharia law that is antithetical to our Constitution. So I'm just saying that this was eye-opening for me. It really was. As far as the trip was concerned, I really didn't decide to go till the last minute. I did a lot of the things necessary so that I could go, but I wasn't going to go. My own mother told me not to go, didn't want me to go, gave me 1,000 reasons, including the fact that I'd be in the tunnels, of which I'm like, well, I'm claustrophobic. I can't go there. And a friend said, if you're in the tunnels, you got a lot worse things to worry about than claustrophobia. Point well taken. So I finally, in connection with conversation with my brother, decided to go because I will never have an opportunity to go again. I don't have the money. I'm single. This is not just something that I go and do. I don't get to travel like some people travel, and I will never be able to go to Israel again. All I wanted to do, whether it was the purpose of the trip or not, I wanted to see where Christ was, and I wanted to walk where Christ walked. Didn't get to do a ton of that, but I still saw Jerusalem, and that was overwhelming for me. And so what I'd kind of like to do is just take you with some of the pictures through the trip that we had, and then explain it from there. And also just to mention, some of these anti-Semites, they actually believe that the Holocaust never happened. They preach that since the Jews, quote, killed Christ, that they are no longer the Lord's chosen people. They come up with things that I don't understand. Literally every evil that has happened in the world can be traced back to the Jews, according to those who don't like them. It is a rabbit hole that if you go down, you may not come out. Maybe don't go there. But again, that's not me saying that I support Israel in all things, at all times, in all places. I don't. But what Heavenly Father has said about Israel, I support. I do believe they're a chosen people, do believe that we're grafted in as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. We do believe in the literal gathering of Israel, which means more than just the Jews, to be clear. So I've read some places that Mormons are the problem. Maybe we are, because we believe in that. I don't know. We had 5 of us go, myself, Josh Tanner, who's in our leadership team on the House. We had Bruce Skog, good friend of mine, John Schertz, freshman, and then Alana Rebel. What's interesting is Alana begged me to make sure I'd go. She is a Democrat. She's the minority leader. She is Jewish, and her grandparents were in the Holocaust. The sort of hate that she got was far beyond mine. Unbelievable. This is a Jewish woman whose literal history is tied to the Holocaust. This is what I would say is absolutely hatred that has no check and no balance, that there's no excuse. Some of the things said to me, said, like it didn't happen. Don't tell me it didn't happen. I literally had a great uncle who was in the war, helped liberate some, and then found himself captured on the death march, which included lots of Jewish people on that death march. It's in our history. So sometimes when people question you like that, you get incredibly, incredibly frustrated when they say it didn't happen. I hung around a lot with Shelley Hughes from Alaska, running for governor right now. I love her. Shelley Hughes from Alaska and Teresa Manzello from Montana. And so let's just see if in doing this, I can kind of take you through the trip. It was a short trip. And I believe it was, I'll probably get this wrong, paid by the Israeli minister, I'll get back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. is the one who paid for the trip. Let me also answer this. Were there expectations? If there were, they didn't convey them very well to me. There are so many legislators who go on foreign trips, state legislators from Idaho and from other places. They go on foreign trips. I heard people saying, you have no business. You're an Idaho state representative. Well, guess what? Remember, I'm pretty part-time with a pretty part-time, even though I work on these things full-time. You can't tell me I can't take a trip. I mean, maybe if I was in Congress working all the time or something, I took a trip. Didn't cost you anything. If we're going to eliminate trips, eliminate all the trips. Don't just say, well, we're just going to eliminate the trips to Israel. But again, many legislators before me in the legislature, even currently, had been paid to take trips to Israel. Anytime you go to a country outside of your own, no doubt there's a certain amount of expectation. And I believe that main expectation is creating goodwill. That's an expectation. I agree. They wanted to create goodwill. I think some goodwill was created. You'd be surprised at how many who went over there were Democrats. I was surprised, I would say over 50, like over, a fifth, maybe even a fourth of those who had gone were Democrats. So it was very much a mixed group, a fascinating group. When we got there, we flew out. I arrived in New York on Saturday evening about 5 o'clock. Had to wait about 7 hours before our trip then we were to leave to get on one of those big planes. It was going to fly like 11 plus hours. You bet I just put my little tracker on to watch. Okay, we're over the middle of the ocean forever. It looks like we're not moving forever until we hit the European continent. And, so fascinating all night long. I was next to somebody sitting in an aisle row who just wanted to go to sleep. I wanted to get out. She said she didn't want to be awakened while she was sleeping. I'm like, well, freak, wake up. I have to move around. I am so tired of sitting right here in this middle row, stuck. That's a hard, if you've been to Europe, again, I haven't. I don't get to travel. I'd never been on one of those overseas trips. Not my favorite part of the journey. So we got there about Sunday night, 5 o'clock. We stayed in the King David Hotel. Oh my goodness, amazing. So I see some people shaking, amazing. As we got there, the airport itself was amazing. A lot of the city of Jerusalem is built with actual stone, I guess, from a certain quarry. So it all looks white. You look out over so many things as they built, and you see what your mind has prepared you to see from pictures, and just kind of that white, old look feel. For me, it was amazing. I could feel that I was someplace different from the moment I arrived. I could feel that. So we went to the hotel. They had a spread for us before we, went to bed. Very healthy. They'll eat sandwiches filled with vegetables. I'm like, this is kind of yucky. No, I'm kidding. But where's the meat? But it was very healthy. Most things were very healthy when we were there. It was very fascinating. They had no Diet Pepsi. That was hard. For me. So eventually I drank Coke Zero, and not the same. We went to bed and we got up early on Monday to get started. The first place, this was really our only opportunity. Let me see if I can start this now. We're kind of right there. So this was our only opportunity on Monday really to sightsee. So this is where they took us down, and some of the places that I guess most people would go, to see Jerusalem. Now, one of the interesting things is for 2 years, because of what happened on October 7th, a lot of people weren't there walking down, and I have more pictures, but that's one thing we couldn't do. We couldn't download a lot of these pictures. So we're walking down, and some of this is ancient. A lot of things I found out, through couple thousand years is created. It's buried underneath and on top, of each other. But as you're going down through all of this and you start to turn the corner, so very cool with the stone that we start walking on, and then little shops. So they weren't all open because there weren't as many people as there used to be going through these. So, just kind of that look. And, I think right now we're about to go in we're about to go into the Church of the Sepulchre. Fascinating. That one didn't resonate with me, though. Again, having not been there, I didn't know what to expect. So the Church is a Sepulchre is it's a church supposedly built and covering ancient sites such as where Christ was crucified and also where Joseph Arimathea's tomb was. And one of the things I rely on is just me. Doesn't make it right, but there are numerous places that other scholars have cited as the place where Christ, Golgotha and Joseph Arimathea's tomb, some things like that. I will say for me, I didn't feel the spirit there, but it was fascinating. And so during Constantine's rule, his mother built this. And so, again, I didn't quite know what to expect. I'm thinking I'm like on Ben-Hur, like, a hill and a cry. I'm thinking that I'm going to see things differently. And I did not. And so you're in, and it really looks more like, an older church maybe you'd find in Europe with all sorts of, again, please don't be offended because I don't know the right words, but maybe trinkets and decorations. Keep in mind that this area is shared by more than just one church, too. If I'm not mistaken, I might get a couple things wrong, but to open these doors, it has to be opened by a Muslim in the morning. I'm getting that right. They're like 4 groups that shared this. So the Muslims, the Jews, it might be a Catholic group, and then there's 4 groups, and I'm going to probably, get them wrong because I didn't, we're being told, and I'm not writing this down. I'm trying to remember. So they open it up. There's me, yeah. This is so we definitely have climbed up now to get to this point where Christ was, and if any of you, like, if and I say something wrong, feel free to correct me, where Christ is crucified. So we looked at that. I don't know, that's me looking at that. Well, that's a better picture because the light is shining in the back so you can see, again, it's for so many, it's such a holy place and very important, for me to be able to see. This slab is supposedly the slab. It's down, you go back down and away from the tomb where they apparently laid Christ, on. And so people would come. I happened to get this picture where people weren't around. They would just touch it. And of course they were praying. Some were kind of sprawled out like that on it. So, to a very sacred symbol to so many. And then this is looking up still in the church. I guess we're going to have a lot of pictures of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then just to the left, if I'm not mistaken, is the tomb of Joseph Arimathea. It was they were moving us along quickly. I had to look in the window. I couldn't quite go in. Now the coolest place, I don't want you to stare at me though, so we'll get there in a minute. The coolest place for me, then after that, we went to the Western Wall. That was pretty cool because we went to where the part, where it's been dug down. So we're getting to some original stuff, that had been there for years and years and years. So before we went there, we were at an inside place first where men and women, we could look down. Then they separated us. Of course, you separate on the outside. I can't quite remember where we were on the inside. And I know Bruce Skog thought that's where we had to write the little note. So he's trying to write a note and get it, in the wall. But this wasn't the main place. And they gave us something to write on. I guess, obviously, we chose this one. This is what I wrote. I wanted peace. I mean, we're all pretty impacted by Charlie Kirk. And, of course, my legislation, obviously, fairness, women's sports, and family. Family is what's key. I figured I can write. As long as it fit, I can write. So that's what I wrote to put in the wall. This is now the wall. So we are the part for the women, as you would probably well guess. Over here to the left is the men. What I found very interesting, I don't know if it happened all the time, but that barrier in between is like there were some places the men would be on one side and the women on the other, and they're standing up on chairs talking to each other. And I forget why, but something, and it might have been because something was going on, what do you call it, for the boys, or the bar mitzvahs. Somebody had said something like that. Again, I don't quite know, so they're communicating as that was kind of going on. It was at this wall in the back where I did put my message into the wall. This was, for me, this was one of the cooler sights. And my message is up. I wanted to pick it. Okay, then as we continued that, because we were going boom, boom, boom. Then we did go to their Holocaust Museum, and is that when we went to it? This might be a little bit out of order, but I'll still just briefly hit on it. So we went to their Holocaust Museum. Have any of you been to ours? Maybe you've been to theirs. Have any of you been to ours? Not very many of you in Washington, D.C. I'll tell you what, I remember the first time I went, I think I had 2 hours. I was visiting my brother and his wife when he was getting his law, or he already had his law degree, his added-on law degree at Georgetown. That wasn't enough. I had to go back and spent like 5 more hours. It was one of the most heartfelt, impactful things I'd ever seen, especially at the end where you have all those shoes. You guys remember walking to the end with the shoes, just shoes upon shoes. They had that here too. But so we did visit that. One of the things that this picture is depicting, this is a gravesite, a mass gravesite. Those people in here, this was early on, apparently, in the war. And this isn't just Jewish people, but people who were killed by gunshot and then buried. The great big mass grave was already dug. They said that this kind of event is really what provoked the camps and the gas chambers. Because this started, imagine this, you're a German, you used to be a really good person, you were friends with many of these people, and now you find yourself in war. But you're a patriot, and you think that Germany's been somehow unjustly treated, and so you join up, you're all in for your country. You think you're doing the right thing, and then pretty soon you start getting assignments. So, of course, one of the assignments, we're rounding up people, or they're going to the ghettos. Then your assignment changes, and now these people are being rounded up, and you have to pull the trigger, and you have to shoot them in the head. And you're pulling that trigger, boom, boom, and you're shooting them in the head. Okay, even in the midst of war, you'd like to think for most people that's pretty hard to do. That's it takes a certain person to do that, and the top brass realized that this isn't working. It's ruining our people, and so at least, and this makes sense to me, that this was instrumental in leading to the gas chambers, where you just like put them all in there. Somebody pulls a button or pushes, and you can do away with a lot more people quickly, and then you just have their own people bury them, and you don't have to really, not bury them, but, the ashes, you put them in, clean them out, that kind of thing, and you don't have to worry about it, right? These are all stories of people who are, no longer there. It went all the way to the top. And these are names. All the way around, names, 6 million names of people that no longer exist. Now, on that same day, in the evening, we went and changed. We got to go to the Knesset. If that sounds familiar, President Trump was just there with the people, with the leadership. Their Knesset is like our U.S. Capitol. That's where their leadership meets. We got to go inside. But we listened to, this is of course Benjamin Netanyahu, and we did listen to him. And then we also got to hear from the foreign minister Gideon and that I can tell you right now, I have absolutely no idea what Benjamin said. not because I did not want to listen to him. Just, sometimes they give a speech, and I don't know. Maybe I was more concerned with where I was. I hope it wasn't bad. No. But still, you're talking whether people love him or hate him. You're in a room with a select group of people listening to a leader in a country that believes more closely like we do than certainly any other country in the Middle East. That, to me, again, I'm sorry. This is not something I could duplicate on my own, and one of the reasons that I wanted to go. And one of the reasons that Alana Rebel, the leader of the Democrat Party, wanted to go. You can't duplicate this. I think that's in the Knesset, and all things like this, of course, I tells a story. Honestly, I can't remember. This is their Knesset. This is where President Trump went. This is where they meet. These are their seats, they feel. That was pretty cool. They don't have much room at the top, but just like, with President Trump, they're invited dignitaries or, people friend, whatever, they sit up there. And everywhere we went, see those pictures? Everywhere we went, there were pictures and stories of those who were being held hostage. Everywhere we went. No one, at least in the place we were in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and some places in between, no one forgot the people that were still being held captive. No one. And then there were pictures of those who were dead. No one forgot. This guy, he's kind of funny. He's their speaker. He also is in a rock band. They played for us at night. So interesting guy. Mostly I remember because he was well-spoken, entertaining in a rock band. Actually, they played some good 70s, 80s. He was good. Okay, now we're going to get to a few pictures that the next day they took us. So we're still in, that was Sunday. We stayed Sunday night and Monday night in Jerusalem, got up on Tuesday and started on our way towards Tel Aviv and first by the Gaza Strip. And so we went to where the Nova Music Festival was. I wasn't really excited to go, not something but I'm not planning the trip, they are. I had no idea how impactful it would be. I had tons of pictures. We just didn't have the space to show them all. So what you have there is this open area. And if your son or daughter relative was murdered there, and it wasn't just a big pile, but you could see right where they were murdered, they allowed you to put up like a 3x4 plaque, not a plaque, but like a steady sort of permanent picture, and you could put on there what you wanted about them, the things they loved, what they did, beautiful pictures of these people like this. Okay, you would see these all over. Then when you didn't know where others were killed or they're killed someplace else, at the festival they went running, they were trying to hide, then they had these other tributes like this for them. And this is kind of just pointing where things were. It was pretty tough because you're thinking, what would it be like if I'd been there? Nowhere to hide. You hear the stories. They tried. There's nowhere to go. Let me see. I can't remember if we have it in here again. This is where the main stage was. That's what that was, where it was set up. And so you just walk around with things about it. Again, you can see all these over here. This is where just how many people were there that just died. We're not necessarily right there, but that's where they got to be honored. This is interesting. A lot of people got killed here. So, and then we'll get to a little bit of the kibbutz. The people are so used to being bombed with military rockets that they have these little shelters all over, and you just run into them. So it's just like an open thing, and you just kind of run in. And this one, it looks like you couldn't run out, so it's kind of open on either side with a big barrier right here in front, open here, and then you run in. So at first, it was crammed apparently with people, crammed because they're running like, again, they were used to bombs. These weren't bombs. There was people coming in with guns, and so they just, slaughtered them. And this happened in a lot of different places, and I'll talk about that right after this. Now we're right there. You can see Gaza. As a matter of fact, we're there. I tried one of the pictures I had you because there's a puff of smoke, and we're like, what the freak is that? It's like, oh, that's something that happened in Israel. Is shooting a missile back over there for something. And here is about the only place where I felt like we had security. When we went over there, my brother's like, oh, everybody's like, oh, you'll be safe. I can't exactly say I felt safe all the time. Like, we weren't walking around with security, but they were here. I don't know if it's because of us, just because of the area and so close to Gaza. Now, so now after we did that, we drove to the first kibbutz, and that's, I might be saying it, a little bit wrong, but a kibbutz is a community. So this community, and I forget which one, was supposedly the first one hit. 1,200 people lived there. Our guide this is his community. He wasn't there that day. He was one of the few people. See, all these people have to serve in the Israeli army, but they don't get to have a gun. I mean, they do when they're in the army, but not when they get out, which is very bizarre. So there were very few guns. This guy, our guide, I forget his name, it's somewhere, called somebody he knew was there because they know this is happening, and he's telling him how to get his gun out of his house to try and help people escape. Like one gun with all this coming in. So right now you're barely seeing some of the destruction. A community also, they have a little bit different, a little more socialism. They all work together for the good of the community for whatever reason. It seems to work, maybe because they're closely aligned, but I know it didn't work with John Smith when he came across on the Mayflower. But whatever, it works for them. They have maybe a few more things in common, including a history. So I had a bunch of pictures of the homes. Heartbreaking, blown up, burnt, gun holes everywhere. Let me tell you what's interesting now as we get into this part. Every home, much like the shelter I showed you, every home has a safe room. Every home. They have to. The safe rooms are often occupied by one of the kids or somebody. It's like a room, but it's also made of steel, concrete, whatever. It'll withstand missiles. So as they're being attacked, what do? They all go to the safe room. The problem was they weren't being attacked by missiles. And as they were there, the people, the Israelis on the inside had to hold the door closed. Because again, this is meant for being, dropped a bomb on. They're holding the door to the room closed. On the other side, Hamas is trying to open it. Eventually, Hamas realized, oh, the actual door, this whole thing is concrete. The door, they could just shoot right through. And so on a lot of them, they just started shooting. They're shooting usually the fathers who were there holding the doors the strongest, and that's how they started to get people. So with their phones, they started calling, say, hey, they're learning they can shoot, people through the door, and get something to kind of barricade the lock, the handle, and get away from the door so they can't shoot you. So they did that, and it was being successful. So then Hamas, fine, we're going to burn you out. And so they had set the house on fire. And the windows they would have were these sliding steel windows, so they could lock it from the inside. But they would die between the smoke and the heat. So they'd open the window, start to go out. Many were just, murders. They came out. Others, they came out. We had pictures of one family with a mother, father, and their two sons, a little bit older, but they kind of got down and, behind where they had some growth. And the mom was on one son, the dad on the other. They both got killed. Their son survived. I mean, I just go on and on and on. They're just heartbreaking stories. But, this guide was there to try to rebuild his community. And, the other people were displaced or other places. They could be with family, somewhere in hotels. And they were, at such time, wanted to come back, apparently. Now, I will tell you something interesting. This guy jumped on the bus with us in the beginning. And, again, depending on what you think and what you believe, I had questions from the beginning. Has anybody read about Pearl Harbor and the fact, there's not a doubt in my mind, Roosevelt knew that the Japanese were coming. Doesn't mean we could have stopped the Japanese, but we could have limited. I think. I mean, the planes couldn't have been stacked worse, right, to get off the ground. Our big ships ended up blocking the harbors. I mean, it couldn't have been a worse situation, right? So I asked our guide. We had like an hour drive to get there, and he goes, "Hey, and if you have any questions along the way," they're thinking we're not going to have any questions, just going to be a peaceful, quiet ride. Everybody go back to sleep. Of course, I raised my hand. And we engaged in a lot of discussion on this because I said, one of the things that I haven't understood from the beginning is why no one came to help. You knew they were being butchered. You could see it. Hamas was filming it. Israel is not that big of a country. You can get from one end to the other in just a couple hours. 6 hours this was going on, and moving around and maybe to another couple kibbutzes, but 6 hours, even more in other places. I said, why didn't they come? Where was your help? And he said he didn't go because it was like just him. He needed, I don't blame him. I'm not talking about you one person. Where's the Israeli Defensive Army? And why weren't they dispatched? So I have my own questions and concerns. Because what happened in Pearl Harbor got us in the war, right? We were all in. Those of you who were there, no, I'm kidding. What happened in Pearl Harbor got us in the war. And I don't know if this had obviously, I don't know what happened, but I'm happy to say it makes no sense that help didn't come. That makes no sense to me. Zero, zip, nada. Help should have been there. So, are there other alternative motives? Hey, I don't live in Israel, but I know this, that our goal, in my opinion, as followers of Christ, should ultimately be working for peace. War is not Heavenly Father's way. Sometimes it's necessary. I'm not saying it's not. Absolutely have the right to defend yourself. But we should be working for peace. That is what I would like to see. More pictures. I mean, their ovens, different things, just their place to live. Memories, histories, gone. You know why I took that? Because it was just outside one of these. It was the most beautiful flower. And I thought, that when we allow it, in spite of all of the ugly surroundings and things that happen to us, we can always find peace through Heavenly Father and beauty through His surroundings if we look for Him. And that was unusual, very soft. I just hadn't seen it. It just caught my eye. Now, as we continue on, so we're going to that later on the day. So then we go back. You can see the 50 states, one Israel. And we were having an evening gala, market-style dinner. Oh, my goodness, market-style dinner. That was just various things all over. You just went to these different places. And I suppose in their own version, it'd be like going to get tacos and pizza, except it's healthy and good. And anyway, it was really good. And then this is the president of Israel. Now, he's definitely more, the prime minister, right, has more power and authority, no doubt. But he plays a role. We got to see, the old president's office and things like that. And he opened himself up to questions, and questions did come. And, some tough questions were asked, including this idea of what took so long. I don't know that we got the kind of answer that we would like to have received, but I thought he was most gracious. And again, it was unique. Who gets to go and listen to the, president of Israel? Now, continuing on, And again, who knows? Maybe as I'm doing this too, I might end up with something out of order. But you're still getting the idea. They had a couple of unique things planned for us on Wednesday because we got there Sunday, left on Thursday night. On Wednesday, they were showing off some of their businesses. And, Israel, very innovative. Some people saying they absolutely have nothing to offer us. Oh, I disagree. And obviously, President Trump is very much interested in the Iron Dome. Of necessity, Israel has a lot to offer, including in, I think, the context of defense. And let's be honest, they're a little bit creative when it comes to weapons of war, whether it's cell phones or signal. What do you call those things? I don't know. What pagers? Yes. So interesting. But we got to go and see some of how they promote startup businesses, and that's more towards the end. How they promote startup businesses. Fascinating. Because there's 250. We were not at the same place. We had 10 buses, and we went 10 different places. Or not 10, probably 5 different places. And so anyway, that was fascinating. Then we went to, as we kind of moved along, something a little more formal on Wednesday evening. Oh, wait, actually, my bad. Wednesday evening was the dinner with President Herzog. So, President Herzog, yeah, because pretty soon that's a pretty big all-day affair. The Thursday was fascinating. We went to, so this is our last day. We departed to the Padul and a visit to the balcony of the state. And this balcony, it's in this area. In the back, it was just fascinating. This is an Arab, someone who, Israel is, of their population, 9 million, and 20% are Arabs who live there and have Israeli citizenship. It's a pretty gosh darn welcoming, I think, state. If you do know that if you are Israeli, that you can go over there and live, but they do verify your heritage through the mother, right? Because if you're born through the mother, you're pretty pretty guaranteed that you actually did come through her if she was Israeli. Not always guaranteed from the supposed father. So we went there, listened to people, including this gentleman who talked to a lot of the problems of Hamas and the deception and how, he himself had turned away, from things like that. But, so just some interesting pictures. We did get to taste here, oh my goodness, their olive oil. There were multiple things to have, but there are little bits of bread and olive oil. I tasted that. It was good. So then this is the last place we went, and we went upstairs. It doesn't look like it, but we went kind of over and up, and this is like a final fantastic kind of lunch dinner. It was a little bit early. This is where we also got to listen to Mike Huckabee. I'll tell you what, he gave a speech that was about 20 minutes long. I have it. I'm happy even to share it if you think you could help me get it off. Not tonight, obviously. It was one of the best speeches I have ever heard in my entire life. That's Bruce Skog with us. He was absolutely amazing. He understands the problems over there. He understands the conflict. He has a deep faith in the Lord and a love of the people, a love of the country, the history, the culture. And he was amazing. I was very impressed, and I don't say that lightly. Even being in the midst of Benjamin Netanyahu, I was not impressed like I was with Ambassador Huckabee. And then this is outside. We went down on Tuesday night, I'll just say this, they gave us our Tuesday evening to ourselves to go find something to eat. Again, I was hanging with Shelley Hughes, running for Alaska, or governor in Alaska, and Teresa Manzotti. We went in the evening, found a place to eat, and then we went into the Meridian Sea. I've lived in California on the Pacific Ocean. Holy Hannah, I've never walked in anything so warm and so beautiful, and the seashore so beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. This is just another picture. If I didn't know any better, I might say I was on Waikiki looking down at the North Shore. Ironically, this gal was the athletic senior women's athletic director at University of Nevada when I was coaching at UC Santa Barbara. She actually tried to recruit me as, hire me, recruit, whatever, as their head coach. It would have been my first head coaching job. And we met, and she says, and I look, and I'm like, Angela, oh my goodness. And I said, I didn't really have to say, so which party do you represent? Of course, she's a Democrat, but that's okay. It was fun to run back into her. And, we had a band. Of course, people enjoyed the drinks. My drink of choice was always Coke Zero. What is wrong? And so anyway, so we went to the airport early, of course, got our stuff ready, and flew that long flight home. And of course, sure enough, then I flew out fairly quickly to Chicago, and then I got stuck in Chicago for a whole nother freaking day of all things. We weren't going to be able to get me out. I could go on and on about that. But the bigger point really is I am so grateful to have been able to go. I don't think that the fact that I went to Israel means that I am somehow all in for all the actions of Israel. It means that I was blessed to go. I was blessed to walk where Christ walked, even if just for a little bit. It is the Holy Land. I do not doubt that. I don't doubt that for a moment. And I do love the people of Israel. Like even our own government, we can question actions of all governments, and yet we can be supportive of the things that they have to do to survive. I can only imagine if I lived there. Life is different. As a matter of fact, I'll say when we switched hotels down by the Mediterranean Sea, I'm in the shower and I'm thinking, is somebody pounding on my door? There's a loud noise. Well, it turns off. The siren went off. Everybody's supposed to go downstairs. Everybody go to the bunker. Missiles coming in. I'm taking a shower. I survived. But there were a few instances like that. And I'm like, oh my goodness. They just do it. This is our everyday life. We have it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm glad I survived that. I'm not going to tell Mom till I did get back. And then I told Mom, by the way, I did go to Israel. You did what? It's pretty cool, but I decided not to tell you. However, I will say when I left, I gave everything necessary to my brother. Here are my codes. Here's my bank account. Here, you get everything. Do with it what makes sense. But it worked out. So I hope you found what I had to say at least a little interesting. I am blessed to live here in America. I am so blessed to be an American. I love this country, and I love the fact that it's also a Christian Judeo country, and I hope that we can find reasons and means to stay united as followers of Christ, quit finger pointing, and find reasons to work together when it comes, especially as followers of Christ, not to finger point, and on all sides, any sides, because I promise you that's what I'm going to work to do. And with that, thank you. I was about to say, I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen, but I guess I'm not at church. Thank you.
Are you willing to take some questions, Barbara?
Oh, but of course.
Hi, Barb.
Hello.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Awesome.
Good seeing you. Hey, I have a question. You asked the tour guide on why there was no response from the Defense Forces, and the one response you got was, well, he couldn't go, which is understandable. But did he ever answer the question on why the Defensive Forces never did go?
No, that's what I was saying. No one answered it. I wish Benjamin Netanyahu had given us the ability to ask questions, but no one seemed to know. And I truly believe in my heart he didn't know. And he'd given up his weapon, so what could he do? But no, there was no answer. And it's a question that, because it happened and because it's not answered, I think it leaves a lot of us. I also, later, maybe you guys have seen it, Charlie Kirk himself wondered that very same thing. I think it's a legit question.
Any other questions? Come on, got to have some couple questions.
So don't take this personally, because I would have, if given the opportunity you had, I would have taken it. It is concerning to me, though, that even what they called it, 50 states, one Israel. I know you said there was no strings attached, and I believe you. But they're clearly trying to accomplish something. They didn't fly 250 politicians from the U.S. to Israel for no reason. And it is concerning how much influence Israel has in our government. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I could look at that from, like I say, so many different reasons. They've done this before, maybe not that many at one time. I don't know. I don't know the history of that. Again, there was nothing ever explicitly stated, but as I stated at the beginning, anyone who would fly anyone to their country is expecting to create goodwill. And the view in which Israel no doubt knows is permeating many facets of America with this anti-Semite response. I think, because I thought about this after I realized some of the concerns, especially once we got over there. I mean, none of this had even crossed my mind. It was more of my own safety. And then for me, I just wanted to, I'm like, oh, what a unique, take advantage, go walk where Christ walked. But I do believe that if I were them, and I had the ability to create goodwill, I would do the same thing. I will tell you that this year I did run legislation I'd gotten from wall builders having to do with how you defined anti-Semitism, but it didn't go anywhere. It was falsely accused of stopping one's First Amendment. Didn't deal with that at all, specifically said that in there. And it was, this legislation had also come out because of what had been happening in other states with the huge campus protests where absolutely nothing was done with those who interfered, even with students' ability to go to class and with all of the violence. So, will I look to bring it again this year? Maybe not. Will I really re-examine it, given some of the pushback? Maybe so, but it specifically, as a matter of fact, I said, I'll give you $5,000 if you can show me where in that legislation it inhibits your First Amendment rights, because it doesn't. And it specifically says that, because it's one of the criticisms with this, people are saying, well, I guess I already introduced that, specifically says that it shall not infringe on First Amendment right, Idaho's Constitution, or the United States Constitution. But what it does do is define, which is federally defined, because Jews have ethnicity, religion, and oh my gosh, what are the three ways that they're supposedly protected under, the Civil Rights Act? We almost had an incident at Boise State, and I was involved in that in 2024 or 23, in shutting that down. Say, we absolutely do not want the pre-Palestine protesters that come in to start the aggravation and drum up what support. Absolutely shut that down, because we don't want that in Idaho. So if there's something they want, nothing changed in my mind. I just had questions, but nothing really changed in my mind. I've always been a supporter of the nation of Israel, but like I said, I question all governments. That's why I got involved in this, because I question authority.
You made a comment that this guy that you had talked to didn't have a gun. And it's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but I've heard that all of the guns in Israel have been confiscated, and they no longer have the ability to defend themselves. That would have been a whole different story had those people been equipped with automatic weapons to fight back. Do you have any comment on that?
I briefly touched on that during this. Yes, that is true. Even most of them have served at some point in the Israeli Defense Force, and even though they served, very few, such as our guide, although his was left at his house, his kibbutz, his village, and in his home, very few have the ability to carry weapons. And so that's why he called, a neighbor wherever he lived to say, this is where my gun is. But you're correct. And they know that. It's just like in any nation that doesn't have a gun, just like here in America. Why we fight? We don't fight so we can go hunting, although I'm sure that's thoroughly enjoyed. We fight so we have protection against a government or outside forces who would come and invade. That was actually an interesting discussion, including with those who are Democrats or more liberal-leaning Republicans. This is why we have our Second Amendment and why the First Amendment protects the Second Amendment. Yeah.
I had a fairly quick question, but I also wanted to say I'm a recent, well, let's see, I fled Washington in 2020 because of what happened, as everyone knows. And so I looked up some more of your background, and I wanted to say thank you so much for what you're doing for Idaho currently. I read and I learned quite a bit as I was doing some research before coming tonight. So I wanted to say thank you for all that. My question is specifically relating to the trip, the funds spent. I mean, it's, like you said, it's an opportunity that anyone would take. How would you explain in relation to the Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution? This isn't, now it's not Idaho's Constitution, but Congress was given the authority to deal with foreign nations. So I just wanted to hear how you can explain that and maybe make it clear for myself how you felt justified taking this trip on another nation's funds.
Easy. We didn't come to any agreements or treaties or anything. You know, this was a show and tell. If they're with that clause, like I said, you would be remiss to point out an Israel trip if you're not going to point out all the other trips to all the other countries that everyone takes all the time. So if we want to go down that, I'm happy. That's fine. But as far as me, my motives probably pretty selfish. Honestly, I would never be able to do that again. Yeah.
Another question? I actually have one, Barb, and this I'm just reading from, I guess it's the Jerusalem Post, and this is one of there are a lot of articles out there, and a statement in here, and I think it's Sa'ar, I don't know, S-A-R, told the delegation that each of them has the ability to set a personal and powerful example for fighting the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS movement, by turning it on its head. Instead of boycotting Israel, promote engagement with Israel. Instead of divesting from Israel, promote the investments in Israel. And instead of sanctioning the only Jewish state, speak out clearly against those who recycle age-old hatred in modern form. And so I guess, and I'm not real familiar with it, but I guess there's this anti-BDS movement going on, or something, or this BDS movement going on to try and boycott, and Israel, if you will. And my understanding is that Idaho has some anti-BDS legislation.
It was passed in 2022. Representative Brent Crane and Bruce Skog, and I forget on the Senate side, brought it. I think it passed unanimously with bipartisan support. I'd have to go look that up again.
Okay, well, appreciate that. But I guess the fundamental question I have is, somebody can come into the United States, and somebody can do whatever, almost anything they want. They can burn that flag. They can say anything they want about the United States without recourse, almost. So why, I guess from this perspective, why does Israel get special treatment? Because if for some reason a company or whatnot does not support what Israel has done at a certain thing and decides to boycott it, I guess our legislation basically says the state cannot do business with that company. Why does Israel get special treatment when even us as Americans don't get that kind of treatment?
I don't have the answer to that, Doug, but I will say that legislation was incredibly ended up being incredibly important for the next year when I brought all of the legislation having to do with pushing back on oh my goodness, what do you, no, the Glenn Beck stuff, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. Basically boycotting us as individuals. Why can't I keep thinking of DEI. We have so many acronyms now. Can't think of what it is, but where our government, where BlackRock, Main Street, Vanguard, taking our money and using it against us, saying, pretty much we're going to shut you down. You can't bank with us. You can't do. I mean, that's being done. It was being done to all of us. We actually had a business in Idaho shut down because they were a gun business, and no bank then would loan them money anymore. They were done. And so this ended up being, ironically, incredibly useful in pushing back on all of that, saying, no, you can't do that to Americans. So, probably a question I'd need to ponder a little more, but I think at the time it was probably a rallying cry taking place by a lot of people, seeing what was being done, knowing some of this was starting to happen to us and saying that's not right. And so that's probably right now, the best answer I'd give you on that. But nobody can think about what I'm doing. ESG. Oh my goodness. ESG. Yeah. Because essentially that was a precursor to ESG, and people just systematically boycotting people. And then, like I said, that was when in May of 2022, after that had been passed, Glenn Beck invited me to his place with 15 other legislators, and then we really hammered out what needed to happen to start passing ESGs or anti-ESG laws, which we certainly did in Idaho, and preserving the people's right so that they can't be boycotted.
Okay, well, I understand that, and I appreciate, trying to look out for American companies and things like this. But myself, and I know some other people that I've talked to, have concerns with given, and I don't know what the right word would be, special treatment to any other kind of country.
Like I said, Doug, I don't have a
okay,
yeah.
And I just want to make this comment, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but this is one thing I will really want you, and to me it's almost like locally, and why do you if you give a company immunity for something,
you mean like giving them special tax breaks that happen all the time, which I'm against?
No, what I'm talking about is like the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine companies. What Bear's trying to do to get their labeling done, and that's legislation that's going to be pushed again this year. Mm-hmm. And exactly what that means is it gives that company immunity from lawsuits. And so my question just is for general, because I'm talking about us, as individuals, why special treatment to entities, whether it be companies, whether it be foreign countries, and all this, and because to me that's almost counterproductive to us.
I wish you would have said that like 50, 60 years ago.
A lot of things I wish I could have done.
Yeah, so. A lot of things.
So, all right. Hey, everybody, let's give Barbara a big hand. Barbara, you're exactly right. And I'll say it, too, is that if I would have had to change... Let me shake your hand. I know you're mad at me. Don't. Okay? And I think all of us would have taken the opportunity to go. And actually, we might have been foolish not to. Okay? Because going, you learn things. And I'm sure you learned something you didn't know. And maybe you learned something that changed your mind one way or the other. It's a learning opportunity. And I'd encourage everybody, if you ever get an opportunity to do something like she did, and you don't want to take it, call me. Okay? Because it's something that, again, like me, I would have likely have done it. For the thing of trying to find out and learn more. Because regardless of, I'll just say this, regardless of the intent, basically, that may or may not have been there on the Israeli government side, it hopefully gives our legislators an insight of where they can have a good education, an understanding of certain things to be able to do what ultimately, and this is my little last jabs, is good for them to protect us. And that's, I think, is what's the key point there. And we need to be able to listen to all sides, see the whole board, to be able to understand how to do that, and then make that logical choice. So, Barb, I know I asked you some tough questions and whatnot, but I appreciate you, and I would have done the same thing. And I do really thank you for coming. And I'm going to remind everybody about tomorrow. We're going to have a little bit of a special event, a little redo of last week's City Council candidate forums. It is really short notice on that we're giving them, and I know that it's right at the end of the campaign season, and so I don't know how many people are going to be able to show up, but hopefully we'll be able to give them an opportunity to come and talk to us, and so I encourage you all to come. And I do know I have a couple of guys that have already said, yeah, they'll absolutely be here. James Skinner has not had really an opportunity, and he's just a young guy, I guess, hasn't had an opportunity to address people. And I have to give it to him that if, and I may be wrong, but I heard he was in his early mid-20s. For somebody to step up like that and want to do something in the city council, that takes a lot of courage. But you know what? We need to have, I'll call it the younger crowd, get more involved and understand what's going on. And so I'm really encouraged that he's going to come and talk to us, and hopefully his actions will encourage more participation by the younger generations, because we definitely need that. And then next week, January 6th, we've heard a lot about it. We still hear a lot about it. We're going to hear about it from a guy that dealt with it firsthand. So with that, thank you all very, very much. And Barbara, once again, thank you. Let's give her a big hand, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Thank you.